am writing a book which is tentatively called Taking the Car Out of Carbon, and in which my central thesis is that public transportation is the underlying foundation of sustainability for a country, for a society, for a region, and that America, by turning its back to public transportation and embracing highways and roads, has done disservice to itself in many, many ways. And one of the arguments that people often use against public transportation is it's a very high cost infrastructure, which is absolutely true. But the reason I want to speak with you, Mr. Quiroz, is I also want to paint the opposite picture, which is the cost of inaction, the cost of not doing something is also very high. And specifically, I want to illustrate that through lives of people, through jobs, through communities. And I want to compare two companies, Siemens in Germany, which, as it turns out, whoever Count von Siemens, I forget his first name, and George Pullman were, as it turns out, contemporaries. And they both started their companies around 1865, immediately after, after the Civil War in this country and after like some Franco-Prussian War or something. I'm not very sure of my history here in Europe. And till about the Second World War, the two companies had very similar trajectories. They worked in infrastructure, in transportation. Siemens additionally did electric generation as well. But then the highways came along, and Pullman and then Pullman Standard started a slow decline. And I think you guys made the last car, I think it was
1981.
1981. It was a Metroliner, I think, for Amtrak. And whereas today, Siemens, just their transportation division, I think employs 20,000 people, does like some 15 or 18 billion dollars worth of business, is in 35 countries. It's basically prospering a lot. It's one of the core components of the new high-speed rail infrastructure in China. And it's for Pullman, it's a missed opportunity. Pullman could have been that company doing that. And I want to tell that story through ordinary people, through the lives of people rather than through data and statistics. So which is why I wanted to speak with you and I wanted to hear from you. And my questions, and I send them to your son, are pretty simple, and you can just feel free to, I saw you on the video, I think you're quite sort of eloquent and well-spoken, so you can say what you want. I just want to know a few things. When were you born? I know that because of your family, you guys moved to Pullman, and you said through marriage you're maybe the third or the fourth generation.
No, I was born in Pullman.
Yes, I know you were born, but through marriage maybe your wife was the daughter of
She was born in Pullman too.
Right. And her dad probably worked, or even her granddad probably worked in Pullman?
Her father worked in Pullman as a car repairman, and his uncle was superintendent. He was the president of the repair shop and came in shops in Pullman.
So his name was Carl Gardelman,
Carl Gardelman.
Carl, C-A-R-L, Gardelman.
Right.
And my mother is Marilyn Gardelman Quiroz.
And that's spelled G-A-R-D-E-L-M-A-N?
T-E-L. So G-A-R-T-E-L-M-A-N-N. And, his last name was only spelled with one N. I'm not sure why that happened. But, so his nephew is my mother's father. So his nephew is Charlie Gardelman. And it's spelled C-H, his last name is C-H, his first name, is a E-Y, not a I-E. Charlie Gardelman. And then his daughter is my mother, Marilyn Gardelman Quiroz. And my mother and my father both were born in historic Pullman. Dad, my mother's birthday is, she was born in 1941. Dad, what was your birthday?
August 2nd, 1936.
Okay, and I've seen that video that your son so nicely put together, and in fact it's very illustrative. But just tell me a little bit how it was growing up in Pullman. I imagine that it was still a very vibrant community, industrially speaking. I mean, even today it's quite vibrant, but...
Right. But when Pullman was open, building railroad cars and all that, there was a lot of activity. They were involved in during the Second World War. They were involved with the building equipment for the Army, United States Army. And after the war was over, then they started building railroad cars, and they turned from passenger cars to commuter cars, because the long distance traveling by Pullman cars, it didn't happen anymore. So that everybody was involved with commuter cars in the city of Chicago and elsewhere in the cities.
So my dad was born in 1936 in the blockhouse on Langley, which is in Pullman. And he was raised there by his parents, but didn't start working for the Pullman Company. When did you start? In 1959, I think?
September 1959. I was 23 years old.
That was in the video. The actual date is in that video that we had. And Dad, what was your role when you first started working there?
I was working as a car install. I installed heater grills in the floor of the cars as a joiner. They call them joiners at the time. And I was out of a job, and the union came and asked me if I wanted a job building railroad cars. I said yes. He said, well, we'll teach you how to work on railroad cars and building cars. And I fell in love with it ever since.
And when you joined the job, Mr. Quiroz, you thought you were signing up for life, basically, right? You thought that this was a way of life that would continue.
That's right. It was a long journey of building railroad cars.
So tell me, when did you first start getting a sense that this was a way of life that would not continue into your generation the way it had the previous generation?
Well, Pullman was born with all the railroad cars and everything like that, and there was a long planning, a long future for me to work for the railroad cars, and I was third generation of building railroad cars through marriage.
Yep.
So
for 2 generations, this had been a good life, and the kids had done what their parents had, and so on. But tell me a little bit about how you came to realize, or what were some of the things that to you signaled that that this life would not continue for one more or multiple generations like it had before you.
So Dad, he's writing a book about how Pullman ended. So when did you start to feel that the company may not continue? Was it the strikes? When did you start
when Pullman started building commuter cars for the cities of New York, Baltimore, and different variety of cities around the United States. And then I felt that they were getting away from sleeper cars, long-distance railroad cars. They're feathering out away from them, from that business.
I see. So you felt even as the type of product changed, as the product mix changed, and it went away from long-distance sleeper cars, you felt that was the beginning of the end. Right.
They were building aluminum bridges at the time, and they were building, doing a lot of repair cars on a lot of the cars.
Now, in the when they were doing these other products, you just didn't think that any company has to be flexible to diversify and so on. You didn't think that was what was going on, but this is very uncanny. I hadn't thought of this, but you read that to be like straws in the wind going the wrong way.
Right, that's right. And then I would, every time Pullman got a contract for 10, 12, 14 cars or 50 cars or 100 cars, that there was the layoffs in between 6 months, 3 months at a time. And I felt that Pullman was starting to feather out of getting out of the business. and there was rumors that they were going out of business.
Hmm.
What years do you think that they started doing that, Dad?
In 65, 1965, 62, 1970.
Do you think that, did you also see it alongside that, like more and more people, were you in your own mind questioning, like because everybody now had a car, people drove cars for, even pretty long distances, what used to be railroad distances, people were now driving cars, airplanes were pretty big also. Did you
Right.
feel that there was a natural, that this is how it should be, that there was a natural demise coming up, or how did you think about the highways and so on?
Well, the highways were improving with the interstate highways and everything like that. There was more faster, easier to travel by car at that time, and the railroad was fading out, and the airlines came in place, and they were faster, and there are new airports, bigger airports, and everything like that. So that started to take over the railroad.
So did you at any point, did you guys, like as your hobby or as just general information, did you follow the railroading industry worldwide? Did you guys know that at about the same time Japan was building its bullet train network, that European countries were investing heavily, were modernizing their railroads after the Second World War, and it was not a natural God-given fact, but that the American government was very consciously starving railroads. Did you guys think about that, figure that out, or did you see it differently?
Well, the government gave grants to Pullman on experimental cars, speed train cars, and it just didn't work out right. Because the old railroad beds, the railroad system in the United States is outdated. It wasn't built for high-speed trains. Okay.
Okay. So it was you thought the network, I mean the fact that the other railcar manufacturers globally were trying new ideas and doing new things, and in the US we were not, this you thought was more like because of the tracks and the network, right?
Right. They had the old-fashioned railroad tracks, beds, and the freight outfit. The freight industry was growing because it was cheaper to deliver freight by freight cars and everything like that instead of passenger cars. Passenger cars are starting to fade out because of there's more freight going on them lines. And there was congested, too, with the freight.
Mm. So if you, did you guys on the shop floor or anything, did you discuss if you were in charge, would you do it differently? Was there any discussion as to what and how might be better ways of handling the problems?
Well, they should have studied more about the high-speed train, the bullet train, and improved the railroad track system. They had to build new track system, a faster track just for passenger cars only, not for freight, because freight congested the railroad and disrupted the passenger car system.
Do you think that there is anything, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you think there's anything political with all this? Like even now when President Obama wants to spend a little bit of money on high-speed network analysis and all that, people kind of, a lot of states and a lot of people don't like that. They think railroads are wastes of money. Do you have any thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that, they should invest more money, more scientists, and more investment on the railroad bullet train system, the speed train system, because not everyone wants to fly. You're missing the whole part of the United States by flying. That's all. When you fly in an airplane, that's all you see is clouds. You don't see nothing else. By traveling by train, passenger cars, you see the whole country, the countryside, everything. You meet people from different cities and different towns. That's what you miss. It's like going across the ocean in a train, or no, going across the ocean by plane, and that's all you see is the ocean. You don't see nothing else. But by train, you see everything. You see the countryside, you see the way people live, and you talk to people who are getting on the trains at different races and people like that. Just different parts of the country.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, it is. That's absolutely true. I'm actually trying to pull up my own questions because what I had sent you, I just want to make sure that I have asked you those things. But you were going to say
one of the Dad, can you talk to a little bit about how you got your collection? Sort of at the end of his career there, when they were closing up the shops, they began throwing out a lot of their old blueprints and a lot of their old hardware. And a lot of the people seemed to just sort of disrespect it, like it was just being thrown out, even the stuff that they knew was old. And my father saw this happening and went to go salvage these artifacts, and still has them today.
correct.
Dad, can you talk a little bit about how that happened?
Well, the Pullman company, decided to clean out their offices, the engineer offices and everything. They had file cabinets with all kinds of prints of all railroad cars and everything like that. And they told us to get rid of it, dump it, throw it in the dumpster. And I said to myself, and I said to my supervisor, I said, well, if this is all junk, can I take that home? He said, take whatever you want. So I took not everything, but just a portion of it, and brought it home. And we repaired, we stripped down these old railroad cars, and we made commuter cars out of them. There was a lot of artifacts in these cars that they were just dumping, scrapping it, junking. That's it. And I brought some of it home.
That's wonderful. Yeah, the last in the I saw in the video that that you had a wonderful collection, and if I ever manage to make it back to Chicago, I certainly hope to meet you and maybe see some of this. And you put it up once a year, right? You put
Right.
it all out together once a year.
For the house tour.
Yeah.
And, it's all voluntary work. It's all no pay or nothing.
It's his
Just
personal
voluntary
hobby to
work.
collect old train materials, and so this is what he brings out every year and has a little display.
Correct. So, how many of you are? Let me now sort of switch away from sort of rail to more human. How many of you are around still that actually worked in the shops?
Well, the guys that are retired, some of them passed away. A lot of them passed away, and a lot of them moved out of state, out of the city of Chicago and the suburbs and all that. And I don't hear from them no more.
So it's
the only one. My brother and I.
You have a brother too that worked.
Right.
Now you said you were born right around the time when the Pullman, the original Pullman company, whatever it was called, the Pullman Rail Car Company, bought the Standard Automobile Company and became Pullman Standard, correct?
Right.
And if I understand correctly, they bought the Standard Automobile Company for essentially all metal bodies because Standard had some proprietary patents, etc., to make whatever joints, metal to metal joints, and Pullman wanted to transition from timber, half metal bodies to full metal bodies, correct?
Right. They experimented on all that.
And so by the time you were working, these rail cars were, would you say these rail cars were at that time in 1959 already falling behind a little bit behind the world, or they were at least at that time?
They were made out of steel, and steel eventually rusts and falls apart. Now the new cars the Amtrak cars are all stainless steel cars. The double-decker cars are all stainless steel and aluminum. And like I say, they changed over. They'll last 100 years, believe me. But the first Pullman cars that they built years and years ago, they were made out of steel and wood, and that deteriorated eventually in time. It broke down.
So, did others find, and yourself also, once I know that you went to work little while for Morrison Knudsen.
Yes.
I saw that in the video. But did you have to work other jobs? What did some of the other people do? How was it for the community, this passing of an era, this when Pullman finally shuttered its gates? Did you guys think it was just another one of those in-between contract layoffs and you would be back there working in a few years' time or a few months' time?
When Morrison Knudsen came to Chicago, and they opened up a shop, and they hired some supervisors that worked at Pullman Standard at the time. And from that point on, they called up the old-timers like myself, my brother, and a few other guys to supervise, break in some of the guys. They had no trade at all of building railroad cars, and we helped them along the way there. And like I say, it was just an experimental thing for a lot of new people. You know, a lot of new people that never got into a railroad car, and they learned more about building with steel, with stainless steel. And it's like carpentry work, but you only work with steel, not wood.
And did you think that Pullman was going to reopen sometime? Like, did you have hope for that event?
Yes, I did, but over the years, and then I realized that no, this is it. That's it, no more, because there's different outfits, different companies that are building railroad cars. Now the stainless steel commuter cars in Chicago, they're all built in Japan and shipped over by boat. The shell, just the shell, they're shipped over by boat and then into a factory in the United States. And the people in the United States done the interior work. They put the seats in the windows, they put the electrical and everything else in. But the shell itself was made in Japan. I got pictures of that, pictures from Japan and everything like that.
That's correct. That's very true. Even in New York, one of the big manufacturers here is Kawasaki.
Yeah.
We get a lot of our cars from Kawasaki, and they do the same. They built the shell. Actually, now they build the shells in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Okay.
It's still Kawasaki. It's a Japanese company, but the manufacturing is happening almost entirely in the U.S. They build the shell. They bring it here, I think, on big flatbed trucks, and then the fitting out is done here. But you're right that it's a completely new generation of technology, and
right.
it's so when you guys when you all disbanded, and I'm talking now, so let's say in the 70s, and when was the strike? When did that big strike happen, and why was that?
It was with the company and the union. They were negotiating on a raise, more benefits, and the company, Pullman Standard, they gave us a wrong story to the union that they're going to be open for a long period of time, and then they turned around and they closed the place. So that's why the union went on strike. And we were on strike for 6 months.
About when was this?
Let's see, it was in around 77, 78 years, 1978, something like that.
Okay, and I can also fact check this. But was that the last time? Did Pullman build anything after that? Oh, 81, right. The last car was 81. So it did recommence production after that, right?
Right.
Yeah, I may have ridden one of your one of the things you built. I've ridden the Surfliner in from San Diego to L.A., and I think that's among the older pieces of rolling stock right now.
Uh-huh.
It's
Yeah,
a double
that's
double
right.
decker. It's beautiful. It's been refitted inside. Anyway, Mr. Quiroz, that's all I have for you today.
Okay.
And thank you for your time. I might come back. I'll be in touch with your son as I put these
Okay.
things down. If any other questions come to my mind, I'll come back to you. But this is very, very helpful.
One last thing,
Oh.
Dad, can you just tell him a little bit about your overall feeling about working for Pullman, what you feel like, how has it affected your life? Just sort of like an overall picture so he has something to wrap it up with.
Oh yeah, sure,
Oh.
absolutely, great.
When I was 23 years old, I started work for Pullman, and I didn't have much of a trade. And Pullman taught me how to build railroad cars, how to work with stainless steel, how to work in a factory, how to take orders from the supervisor, and then when the car was finished, I was really proud to see that beautiful car that we built by scratch. You know, and then over the years, I just love railroad cars. I love them. I love them. That's it.
And at the meeting that they held for the historic Pullman National Park, you held up a sign. Do you remember what that sign said, Dad?
Yes, the sign says. Let's see. The sign says there's the right way, there's a wrong way, and there's a Pullman way. Now, George Pullman was a stubborn millionaire. And he wanted his way, and that was it. Regardless if it was right or wrong, he wanted it in his way. That's it. That's my slogan.
You know that he crushed a very serious strike. There was industrial action. I forget now the exact year, but 1873, I think. You know, 5 or 6 years after he started, I think 1867 is when they started Pullman. 6, 8 years later, he had this big strike because you know how Pullman was vertically integrated. George Pullman owned
Right.
everything from the church to the bakery to the laundry, and
Right.
folks wanted, and he crushed that strike using National Guards, and people died and such.
Yes, there was a lot of people died, and a lot of people suffered, and a lot of people lost their homes, everything, because of the strike, and because George Pullman was a stubborn millionaire. He wanted his way, and that was it. If he was trying to say white is black and black is white, that's the way he wanted it.
Yeah,
You
but
know?
he also I think was in many ways a visionary of his time. I think he created like you made that rail car out of scratch. He created a virtual industry out of scratch, and you know if that sort of vision had been stuck to, then Pullman Standard would still be alive and producing high-speed rail cars for somewhere or the other.
Yes.
Now so he was born in 36. The way Dad, how do you want your name listed if he uses you? Do you want your full name or do you want Al Quiroz?
My full name.
So his full name is Alfonso, Alfonso Quiroz. And what was your title again, Dad?
Joiner. I was a joiner, called joiner.
For Pullman Standard Company. He was
I've
born,
done the interior work.
and he was born 1936.
Yeah, I have, and your mom's name is Marilyn, and she was born 1941.
That's right.
Right.
Okay, and your